Hi. Do you believe in God? Despite that belief in God, do you find yourself struggling to find happiness in your life? I'm Joe Miller. This is video number 2 of our Soul Snack series on the book Universal Garden of Emuna by Rabbi Shalom Arush. So, as I said in the first video, I'm going to start out each video with a couple of housekeeping items. Item number 1. In these videos, I'm not going to be trying to convince anybody to believe in God who does not believe in God. In fact, if you don't believe in God, I'm not judging you, but please don't watch these videos just to leave comments or to try to convince people that they shouldn't believe in God, or attempt to prove that there's no God, or to try to criticize or pick apart myself or Rabbi Arush. That's not my intention here to engage in those kind of discussions. There's plenty of other places for that. The bottom line is, I'm not trying to convince you as an atheist to change your beliefs, so please don't take up this space trying to convince me to change mine or other folks who are enjoying these videos to change theirs. There's a million other forums for those kind of discussions. Also a reminder, if you're interested in getting a copy of the Universal Garden of Emuna book and you live in Virginia or North Carolina, you can do that by emailing us at intake1, that's the number 1, intake1 at joemillerinjurylaw.com, or calling us at 877-622-8656 toll free, and we will be happy to mail you a free copy of the book if you live in Virginia or North Carolina. So to recap real briefly, let's jump in. In the first chapter, Rabbi Arush recounts really what started him on the path of prayerful service to God and becoming a spiritual leader. And in chapter 2, which is called the Foundation of Emuna, the Foundations of Emuna, he discusses head-on some of the biggest barriers to having Emuna. Again, that's the original biblical word for an intense, deep faith in God. And he also gives some suggestions on how to overcome some of those barriers to that deep faith. And of course, I'm going to say this probably a few times, as with all the chapters in this wonderful book, each chapter is just so incredibly rich with beautiful details and spiritual revelation, and it really goes beyond the scope of what I'm trying to accomplish here with these videos to go over each and every one of these details. All I'm really trying to accomplish here is to give you all just kind of a little taste, a soul snack, so to speak, of what's in this wonderful book. And that hopefully you're going to be motivated and encouraged to get a copy of the book and to drink from the nourishing waters of this wonderful book yourself, as have millions of other people before you. So Rabbi Arush starts out the chapter, attacking, like I said, head-on some of these biggest questions that anyone, probably the biggest question anybody who has suffered or is suffering or going through some kind of difficult time is having. And that is, why? Why does this person have money and I don't have money? Why do I have this never-ending struggle with poverty and deprivation? Well, these fat cats are living high on the hog and they're just getting richer every day of poor people who are suffering. Why does this nice, kind person who never hurt anybody, why did they suddenly die at a young age? And we see that many of the Scrooges in the world live high on the hog to a ripe old age. Why? And why are some people handicapped? They're born that way and they suffer. And why are so many people lonely and unable to find a spouse? Like many things in this book, though, at the end of the day, the answer comes back to Emuna. He explains, Rabbi Arush explains, the idea of Emuna goes way beyond just believing in some spiritual being that, sits up in heaven and looks down at us and watches what happens, right? Emuna means a belief in, I'm quoting this on page 30 of the book now, a single, supreme, omniscient, benevolent, spiritual, supernatural, and all-powerful creator of the universe. He alone cares for each of us in a unique, tailor-made fashion according to our own individual needs. That's a quote. He goes on to say that each and everything that happens in our lives not only is a direct result of divine providence, but that each thing that happens is specifically designed to help us perform our task in this world. And according to our ancient traditions, really, each of us have a specific task in this world. And completing that, our specific mission in life, whatever it is the highest achievement that a person can accomplish while they're in this world. Now, sometimes, as Rabbi Arush explains, just like an Olympic athlete has to go through grueling, difficult, painful training to get to their goal, God sometimes sends us difficulties to prepare us and guide us on the path of our intended mission in life. And what does God really want from us at the end of the day? Rabbi Arush relates, it's to get to know Him, to get close to God. Now, I know for many of us, it's really hard to wrap our heads, around this idea of this God this way. Many of you may have never thought of God this way. And I think that's simply because, by definition, there really isn't any equivalent of God that we can point to in this world. Say, yeah, that's what God's kind of like this. No. There's nothing like that. Nothing in the material world that's like this. Nothing whatsoever that you can compare Him to. So, because what we're talking about, think about what we're talking about. We're talking about a being that controls the entire vast universe, from the movement of billions upon billions of stars and galaxies and planets, and all the lives of any and all the creatures that may live on these planets, all the way down to something random like the decision as to what food a particular earthworm here on our little blue planet, tiny little blue planet, crawling in the dirt, is going to eat tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. So yeah, that's really hard to wrap your head around, especially when you're told that you can have a very deep personal relationship with that same supreme being. And yet we're told, and we know it's absolutely true. So Rabbi Arush goes on to say, to not be deceived by these folks who appear to have an easy life, with no worries at all. He quotes a verse in Proverbs and he says, God reproves those He loves like a father chastises the child. So in other words, if you're having trials and tribulations, that's a sign that your loving Father in heaven loves you and is trying to awaken you to get closer to Him. God's not trying to torment us or punish us if we're having difficulties. What He wants is to stimulate our soul searching and maybe regret some of our mistakes for our own benefit, to add meaning to our lives in order to help us accomplish our ultimate life's mission. So how do we apply this concept of Emuna in our lives? Many of you probably know the answer already because you were raised that way, and that is the answer, which is prayer. Not only prayer, but Rabbi Arush suggests, and this is from our tradition, daily personal dialogue with God. And he goes on to say on page 45 of the book that God wants us to turn to Him not just for the big stuff, but for all of our needs, whether they are big, whether they're small. God doesn't care. It's one of the things that a lot of people forget. God doesn't care about how much power, how much money, how much influence we have, whether we have a PhD from Harvard. He quotes, Rabbi Arush quotes in there Psalm 147, quoting King David, who said, God favors those who fear Him and who long for His loving kindness. That's what He's looking for. And besides, many of us know, even if somebody acquires all that power and all that money, you can't take it with you into the grave, right? The bottom line is it simply can't be the purpose of our existence is to acquire stuff, to go to the spa, to go to the hairdresser, and to gratify our bodies, when ultimately we're all just going to end up, I hate to say it, excuse the expression, food for worms. Anyone who believes in God knows that we have an eternal soul that survives the grave, and that there's a world beyond our world, and that those who have achieved this closeness to God are going to reap the rewards of that closeness they've achieved in the world to come. I'm going to end this second video by attempting to relate this beautiful and true story that Rabbi Arush gives over on page 47 of the book about a beautiful young woman who came from a very highly respected family in her community. And I think this really tragic but amazing story really gives us just a tiny glimpse into the world behind the curtain, so to speak. Just a little peek into a situation that illustrates that only God really knows what's going on. And that there are important reasons behind even the most horrific events, and that just because we can't figure it out, it doesn't mean that, in fact, there's way more going on that we may ever understand. So as the story goes, the righteous and modest young woman she marries this very righteous businessman in this town that they live in. And both of them are amazing people of great charity and compassion. The early years of their marriage are just blessed with beautiful children, lots and lots of beautiful children, happiness, an abundance of income, and opportunities beyond belief to become pillars of their community, which they did, and do constant acts of kindness in their small community, helping the poor and the underprivileged constantly. I mean, these were really stand-up people. And then suddenly, a horrible disaster. The couple's little 3-year-old boy, his son, was viciously attacked, mutilated, and murdered by a drunken sailor. Nobody in the community could understand this. Nobody in the world could understand it that knew about it. Thousands joined in mourning for this little boy, this poor innocent child. Why did God do this? They start asking, what did that innocent toddler possibly do to deserve to be killed in such a horrific way? And not only that, it happened to these wonderful people. But despite all this, this righteous couple, these wonderful people, it did not shake their Emuna. It did not shake their deep faith in God. They continued as they had before, supporting the community and doing their constant acts of kindness. But then, after that, another tragedy. The righteous husband, the holy husband of this couple, this businessman who had performed so many acts of kindness, got sick suddenly and died. And this time the young woman, she's now a widow, she was inconsolable. Her tears just perplexed and agonized everybody in the community. How could such things happen? Why would God do this? And the woman couldn't function at all. 3 years passed, and she had continually cried through all of those 3 years, mourning and mourning and mourning for her husband. Finally, one of her many sons, who had just gotten married, came to her and said, "Mama, it's been 3 years. You've cried enough. We have laws, there are traditions, set times for mourning, and it's gone way beyond that. We have Munna, and we believe that everything that God does is for the very best. By continuing to cry, you're not only hurting your remaining children who are still here, but you're hurting your husband, our Father's soul that resides in heaven." So at that point, the widow finally took a deep breath, and she made a firm resolve at that moment to trust in God. She'd always trusted in God, so why not now? And at that point, a calm came over her. For the first time in 3 years, she slept soundly that night. She realized that her pain was from her lack of Emuna. It wasn't from the fact that her husband was gone. So that same night, Rabbi Arush explains in this story that she had a dream. And in this dream, she came to a beautiful garden with beautiful flowering trees. An old man with a long beard, who radiated light from his face, approached her and asked if she would like to see her deceased husband. He led her to this big, magnificent, giant palace where a young man was giving a lecture to a whole group, thousands of elderly, righteous souls were listening to this young man. When he finished the lecture, he came over to the woman, and she realized right away it was her husband. She asked him, "Why did you have to leave me alone at such a young age? And why does it suddenly look like you're a big shot here? I mean, you were a righteous person, but you were never like a scholar or anything like that. I mean, it's like you're a big rabbi, you're a preacher here or something. You never did anything like that when we were back on earth." And the husband told her that he was sent back to earth. Yes, he resided in heaven most of the time, but he was sent back to earth to fulfill the biblical commandment to be fruitful and multiply. He was born for the sole purpose of marrying and having children and raising them in the path of God. He completed that mission, and therefore he no longer had to remain on earth, so he didn't. The widow then asked about their 3-year-old son. Why did he have to die in such a horrible way? The husband explained that their son was a very, very lofty soul who would have stayed in heaven forever. But he saw, the son of theirs saw that there was a very harsh decree that got issued onto the community that they lived in. Apparently, the people there were not treating each other very well. And so the decree was that everybody in that town was to be killed by a crazed invading mob. So this lofty soul, this young boy volunteered, raised his hand and volunteered to die a terrible death as atonement for the entire town. So he saved the whole town. He became a righteous martyr, and now the husband related to his wife. He lives in the bliss of divine light that surrounds him constantly. I can't, only a few of us get to see him. I'm one of the few that gets to see him. And the husband only related that until now, when she had finally resigned herself to actually have Emuna and take that deep breath and realize that God does everything for the best, until now he wasn't able to reveal himself to her. But now he was able to tell her, complete your mission on earth, please remarry, I love you, but please remarry and continue to live your life. Live a life of Emuna. That's what you need to do. It's a beautiful story, right? And so Rabbi Arush then reminds us, as the story concludes, that he says what this shows is that each of us has a specific task to fulfill in this world. Some of the tasks may take longer to fulfill, and others may take a shorter time and you complete it at a much younger age. And once again, I think this story provides a vivid example how there's so much more going on behind the curtain. And not all of us merit to have the truth revealed to us like this young woman did in the story, in a dream. But in the meantime, we can strengthen our faith in God, that he's doing everything for the very best. And Rabbi Arush closes out the chapter by imploring us to really pray hard to find a life coach, a spiritual guy that will help us through life. He says, you're not going to be able to figure this out just by thinking about it. You're going to have to pray. In the meantime, we're going to go the next chapter. We're going to chapter 3, the next video. Rabbi Arush is going to go more into depth about what we talked about in the first video briefly, the 3 levels of Emuna, and I look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, I really hope that you've enjoyed this material as much as I have. Please feel to leave a comment below, subscribe to the video and to the channel here, and until next time, I wish you all of God's endless blessings. This is Joe Miller, out.